If anyone wants to derive transcendental pleasure by hearing the pastimes of the Lord, he must hear from the authoritative source as explained here. Maitreya heard the narration from his bona fide spiritual master, and Vidura also heard from Maitreya. One becomes an authority simply by presenting whatever he has heard from his spiritual master, and one who does not accept a bona fide spiritual master cannot be an authority. This is clearly explained here. If one wants to have transcendental pleasure, he must find a person with authority. It is also stated in the Bhagavatam that simply by hearing from an authoritative source with the ear and the heart, one can relish the pastimes of the Lord. Otherwise, it is not possible. Sanatana Goswami therefore has especially warned that one should not hear anything about the personality of the Lord from the lips of a non-devotee. Non-devotees are considered to be like serpents. As milk is poisoned by a serpent's touch, so although the narration of the pastimes of the Lord is as pure as milk, when administered by serpent-like non-devotees, it becomes poisonous. Not only does it have no effect in transcendental pleasure, but it is dangerous also. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was warned that no description of the pastimes of the Lord should be heard from the Mayavada or impersonalist school. He has clearly said, Mayavadi Basya Shunile Haya Sarva Nasha. If anyone hears the Mayavadi's interpretation of the pastimes of the Lord, or their interpretation of Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, or any other Vedic literature, then he is doomed. Once one is associated with impersonalists, he can never understand the personal feature of the Lord and his transcendental pastimes. Shuta Goswami was speaking to the sages headed by Shaunaka, and therefore he addressed them in this verse as Dvija, twice born. The sages assembled in Naimisharanya, hearing Srimad Bhagavatam from Shuta Goswami, were all Brahmins. But to acquire the qualifications of a Brahmin is not everything. Merely to be twice born is not perfection. Perfection is attained when one hears the pastimes and activities of the Lord from a bona fide source. This is a very, very interesting verse. Whenever we read any of the writings of the scriptures, there's so much content. But one thing I noted when I was studying this verse is there is a very key element pervading throughout this whole purport, including the translation. I asked him to keep the purport up because look through it, and who can tell me which keywords from translation to purport stand out in this verse? And when I say keywords, there's a redundancy factor of 1, 2, or 3 words all implying the same thing throughout this purport. It starts first with the translation. Raise your hand. Authoritative. Right? So I went through the purport and I made a dot by every word that is implying that what we call intent. I had a long talk with Chanchalapati the other day. We were discussing the disciplic succession. And he's been in touch with some of the top-notch Sanskrit scholars. And they are totally amazed at Prabhupada's translations from the Sanskrit like they'd never seen before, and they were the top scholars. And we went through one verse, and we looked at all the different ways that people have translated that verse in history, and that Sanskrit scholar said that Prabhupada had hit it right on, because he knew the intent. The important thing of the disciplic succession is that you'll see some variation, but the intent is always communicated through each disciplic succession, every layer of every acharya. The intent is always the same. But here, we're talking about a verse that's describing the pastimes being described by Sutta Goswami, and one would think, let's just enjoy the pastimes, isn't it? We see in many places what we call Bhagavat Saptaha, where people like to enjoy the pastimes. But Prabhupada is stressed from the beginning of his advent to us throughout the world, and that was to understand what authoritative means in this disciplic succession, because right now we have millions of presentations, many disciplic successions, many different types of gurus, many impersonalists in the guise of personalists, calling themselves devotees. So Prabhupada is doing something to protect us from being misled, because he explains here, he warns us here, how dangerous it is to become contaminated. Because once contaminated, how unable it may become for one to understand the personal aspect of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So when I went through the purport, and I made a little dot throughout this purport from authoritative source, next line, bona fide, after that authoritative, after that a bona fide spiritual master, cannot be an authority. I mean, almost every line there's one word, from bona fide to authoritative to authority, throughout the whole purport. Must find a person with authority simply by hearing from an authoritative source. It's pervading the whole purport from the translation. It's not so much about the pastimes that are being described, but about the source of these pastimes being described, who is describing them. Then he continues. Warned us, no one should hear anything from the lips of a non-devotee, which would be somebody that's not authoritative. Then again, towards the end of the first page here, we see about authoritative. In the next page, towards the last paragraph, we again see the constant repetition, qualifications, and from a bona fide source, the last words. So when I was reading through it, I just kept seeing the same theme being portrayed. And I began to think of how important it is in our disciplic succession to be able to understand that very specific point. It is for the benefit of you. It is for the benefit of the sampradaya. It is for the benefit of the person you're preaching to. Benefit of everyone. Because the tendency to simply preach from sentiment or speculation or non-authoritative versions will be dangerous, will not have any effect, and will actually be thieving, stealing. Isn't it stealing when you're not giving something, like Prabhupada says here, as pure as milk? What is pure milk? What is the pure milk? Are you getting pure milk in a plastic bag? Have you read the ingredients? How do you get pure milk? You go up the line. If you follow the path from that pure milk, as Prabhupada describes, you'll find the pure milk because it comes from the cow. So if it comes directly from the cow, at that point it's pure milk. When we used to live in Madras, when we were president of the Madras temple, my godbrother and I, we would have a cow come to give us pure milk every day at the temple. We would keep an eye on him because we've seen every trick in the book of diluting milk. Okay? Finally, we saw that he always came on very hot days with long sleeve shirts. Has anybody seen this trick? This trickery, this unauthoritative, unbonafide way of getting milk? He had a sack of water under his shirt, and running down his shirt was a tube, and as he's pulling the milk, he's putting water in the milk. So even that, you couldn't get pure milk, and you're seeing it come from the cow. So the ability to be so analytical, based on reading Prabhupada's books and scripture, to get the pure essence is so important. We're seeing now, it's almost amazing, Srila Prabhupada, the acharya of authoritative and bona fide, presentation, quickly things deteriorate to diluted milk. Because the holders of the Sampradaya, which is every one of you, and I'm not speaking of anyone here because we're of the Sampradaya that is trying to be the most bona fide, based on Scripture. The only way to understand what is bona fide is by reading the Scripture. And without that, we cannot change anyone. We will be changed. If we find some pleasure in going to all the different temples, to all the different sampradayas, to all the different gurus, we will be tricked, we will be cheated, and we ourselves will become sahajas, mayavadis, or without any good qualities. And I'll give many examples of that. I mean, a simple example. Why do I bring up all the time IT? Bangalore, capital of IT. My wife's in IT. She's from India. It's because if you understand anything about coding, and coding is very similar to a sampradaya from an authoritative source, you could code all day long and you could think your code is perfect. You make one mistake and you go to QA, which is quality assurance, quality testing. And it keeps not going through, it keeps failing. Because of one tiny little, maybe, comma. Isn't it? Who here has done some coding or developing or has some experience with software? Don't tell me no one. This is Bangalore. Right? So am I saying the right thing? Have you seen it fail? And how hard it is to go back and check it and check it and check it, but it fails. So authoritative. We can use that example in every material sphere. Authoritative, bona fide, authoritative source. So I know, my wife says, I don't know, it keeps failing, it keeps failing, it keeps failing. They will not let it go to the main database. The testing is done outside of the main database, so it doesn't interfere with it. So they catch it before it goes to that. Otherwise, it becomes, if you let it go to the main database, everything becomes contaminated. You know. So, what is the difference? People say, oh, spirituality. And these are people, Hindus, that have come to my house in America, and Rama and Ravana and God, and it's all just mythology. Have you ever heard anything in material world called mythology? Science, engineering, any science, any field. Have you seen anything called mythology? But yet when it comes to the science of Krishna consciousness, the term mythology is used. The root of mythology is myth. And what is a myth? It's usually something that's not true. Some fabrication of some man's mind. So once it becomes mythology, and it's not really that authoritative, then anything goes. I could say whatever I want. Like someone came to our house, a psychiatrist and a neurosurgeon. They were Indians, from my wife's state of India, of Assam. We got into a discussion about Lord Ram, and they started telling me, in their understanding, in their version, and what they had heard, and what they had thought, and what somebody had told them, that Lord Ram had taken instruction from Lord Ravana on how to be a leader, how to be a person in charge of things. Has anybody heard that before? They were fighting with me. I said, how can you say anything like this? So, what does it matter? I heard, you heard, our opinions are okay. I wouldn't stop. I wouldn't let go. I had never heard that from any authoritative source. I had read Valmiki's Ramayana. I had heard and read as much as I could in Srila Prabhupada's books about Lord Ram. I had never heard that before. That now that Ravana was Lord Ram's guru, teaching him something. So because I had never heard it, it was never backed up, never validated, never authorized, I stood my ground. They became furious, so angry. They said, we're leaving your house right now. I said, as you wish, but I will never accept what you're saying. So as long as you want to keep saying that, I will not accept it. And they left. So the importance of understanding what Prabhupada has spent his whole existence on this planet for our benefit is the study of Srila Prabhupada's books. The study of Srila Prabhupada's books is, as Prabhupada said, the same as chanting. So if we know we have to chant 16 rounds, we also know we have to study Srila Prabhupada's books. Has anybody known anyone that has come to Krishna and left? No? Everybody's come and stayed? Nobody's left? That's why I said to come closer. Tell me, if you say yes, you know somebody who's come and gone, right? We do. We've seen. And most of it is because that they have not read Srila Prabhupada's books. They've not chanted 16 rounds. They've not followed his instructions. Once the instructions are broken, it is the same as the circle of protection that Lakshman put around Sita when he left. He was being distracted. What was the distraction? Was it the deer? Marichi, right? So Lakshman said, as long as you stay within that circle of protection, nothing will happen. Of course, this is Leela. We can't compare Sita Devi, that she's under any influence. This is Leela. But the examples are there. That's why these examples are there for us. So Ravana came as Shaivite, begging for some, water. And she felt from her heart, so sentimental. And again, this is Sita. These are lessons. She's not sentimental. She's the goddess of fortune. She was so enamored by wanting to please, by culture, the Shivite. She left the circle of protection. Finished. Then the whole Leela begins with Ravana, getting Ravana back. So everybody here is protected as long as they're within that circle of protection that Prabhupada has given us. And he said, as long as you chant your 16 rounds and follow all the principles, I will take you back to Godhead. So he's given us the authoritative guarantee, the authoritative knowledge to protect us. But without reading, without constantly reinforcing, we'll somehow get distracted. Now, we have seen it with our God brothers or God sisters because they saw a Swami who was Gaudiya Vaishnav and he was preaching something that Prabhupada had never preached and he was very loving and they're gone. And now he's gone. Now who will they go to? Because they're dependent on living Guru. The living Guru is here, Prabhupada said, in the Vani of his books. To constantly learn and read, Prabhupada spent we never saw Prabhupada sleep. Because every waking hour was translating and purports. And where did the purports come from? Does anybody know? Huh? Lord Krishna. Prabhupada said he was sitting right here, reciting the purports to him. So why would you want to change it? Why would you want to change it to one word? The other day, I was seeing a change that was made. We see every day these changes that are being made. Whole purport was, translation was the same, except instead of devotional service, they had to put pure devotional service. They had to add the word pure. That changes things a lot. It's like Shuddhanam or Nambas. They're saying the name that's spoken and chanted before one is totally pure. But Prabhupada they gave, what's so amazing is they're doing such wonderful studies of how many dozens of times Prabhupada and disciples in front of Prabhupada repeated the translation from the 1972 Macmillan book. They kept reading it in front of Prabhupada. He never once said, no, change the add pure. But somebody conditioned by the material energy, not really a pure devotee that we know of, that we can see, or they wouldn't have changed it to begin with, has decided to change the intent. What is devotional service? Somebody's chanting Hare Krishna, bowing, hearing, listening, remembering, offering his whole soul to Krishna, but he's not totally pure, and he leaves his body. And Krishna says, one who thinks of me goes to Krishna. They're starting to get in these different mindsets. It's coming from other places. what Prabhupada is telling us is enough. To go to this Babaji and this Mayavadi. We have now leaders within the ISKCON society that are going to gurus who are full Mayavadi. Full Mayavadi. Bringing him into temples, spreading it to temples. It's like a disease, Prabhupada says. A complete disease. And Prabhupada's given us the most pure thing. We're standing there, we're milking the cow ourselves. We say, it's too thick, let's add a little bit of water. Why? The Ayurvedas, the Vedas say the importance of milk, pure milk, directly from the cow. One should be like a jeweler. Okay? You know what jewelers do? See the purity. If they're gold jewelers, they're looking at the purity. 18 karat, 22 karat, 12 karat. America has 10 karat. You know what these 10, 12, 14, 18, 22, 24 is? Levels of purity. And in America, the highest dilution of gold is going on. Most places in the world won't even touch it. 10 karat. It takes more money to melt it to get any gold out of it than to get any real gold. You go farther east, you're getting, in Europe, it's Italy, 18 karat, 75% gold. You come towards the Middle East and Asia, you're getting 22 karat. Okay? 22 is 91% approximately, pure gold. Then we have 24 karat gold. 100% pure gold directly from the gold mines. I went to Vrindavan, I was selling a 24 karat gold chain one time. Nobody wanted to take it at 24 because they said, it's not 24. I can guarantee it's not 24. I said, I will bet you right now, 1 lakh. And this is based on my experience, because I've, in business, have dealt with these things. And they should know better. No due diligence to find out authoritatively if this is bona fide 24 karat or not. Fought. He gave me 1 lakh, put it on the thing, says, bet you 1 lakh. I said, I'm betting that 1 lakh. No problem. He went everywhere, went here, went there, had it tested, came back, face was down. Says, it's 24 karat. I said, okay, thank you for the 1 lakh, now pay me for the gold. No, I didn't mean. I said, you said? I said, I guaranteed it. So another time, I sold some gold to a man that was from India. It says 22 karat gold on the locket part. I know all about 22. It melts to 18. But he trusted me, because I'd done business with him before. So every time before that, he had tested it. You use acid and you use a scratch test. You've seen the black stones? Like that. So every time he trusted me. I came back later, he said, why did you sell me 22? It says, it's actually 18. I said, you didn't test it? He said, no, I trusted you. Do you understand the analogies I'm making? He trusted me. He shouldn't have trusted me. Every time you should test it. So Prabhupada says, Tadvidi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya. There's a lot of verses I'm going to go through really quickly, that every one of them is based on, whether it be disciplic succession or spiritual master, it's about testing. Shastra, Sadhu, Guru. You must know Shastra, Sadhu, and Guru, and to make sure it's 24 karat. If not, you'll be cheated. So Prabhupada is giving, in the Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam, the acid test, the scratching test, the milk purity test. Without reading this and understanding it, you will be cheated. One day, someone will come to you. He'll be powerful. He'll have mystical powers. He'll have siddhis. He'll bring vibhuti in his hand. He'll bring watches to you. He'll put up his hand and you're walking and you feel like you're hitting a wall. That happened to me in Kaluwe. Kanchipuram in Tamil Nadu when I met the top Shankaracharya Guru. And we were walking towards him and he stopped us in his track by putting his hand up from 1,000 feet away. And my godbrother and I, we looked at each other and said, he's got a siddhi. He's got a power. We weren't like, we want to see him. We want him to be our guru. We want to follow him. We want to hear his teachings because he showed us a mystic power. No basis. In fact, he complimented Prabhupada. For over 1 hour, he glorified Prabhupada. And he saw we weren't impressed. So, Prabhupada's books are a barometer, a baseline, for understanding what is spiritual life. And then, if you have full faith in what Prabhupada's saying, you must follow continuously. Otherwise, you leave that circle created by Lakshman, and we will become again, as Prabhupada said, Puna Musika Baba. That means there's a story where the guru is, a mouse is coming to the guru, and he's saying, "Oh, please save me, Guruji, please save me. This cat is following, and he's going to eat me." He says, "All right, become a cat." And then all of a sudden, the cat is running to the guru and saying, "Oh, Guruji, save me, save me. This dog is trying to eat me." He says, "All right, become a dog." Then the dog comes to Guruji and says, "Oh, please save me, please save me. This tiger is trying to eat me." He says, "All right, become a tiger." And the tiger's sitting there, and he's going, I want to eat this guru. Guru says, "All right, become a mouse." No more. So this is how people get powers in ISKCON. People become powerful, and they do such wonderful service and so many great things, and then all of a sudden they become a mouse because they forgot who they were. Everybody is covered by material energy except the pure devotee, the Acharya, the Uttamadhikari. He's the only one that can pull us out. I think I mentioned the other day, or I've talked to somebody about quicksand. You get pulled into the mud. It's like a mud. Put one foot in, you try to pull yourself out, put the other foot in, you try to pull yourself out, all of a sudden you're sinking, you're sinking, you're sinking. Nobody from around you can pull you out. In the movies in America, they have to take a rope and tie it around you with a horse and pull you out of the mud. That is Prabhupada. Material energy so strong. You're chanting your rounds beautifully. Everything is great. One little thought enters. Boom, you start to fall. That's how it came in the spiritual world. I want to enjoy. I want to be like Krishna. I want to be served. I want to be powerful. So it happens even within the environment of devotees. So what other devotees are supposed to do is help each other. Quote verses. Not talk any nonsense other than helping each other sustain the Krishna consciousness that Prabhupada has given us. So when I went to this verse and I saw the continuous repetition of authoritative, isn't it? Nobody else anywhere in the world would stress that so many times. Because Prabhupada, even during his time, why you're going to Gaudiya Math, what you're going to buy, what book are you going to get. Prabhupada told me nothing but Brahma Samhita by my guru. That's it. Another devotee asked, he said nothing before, nothing after 1932 from my Bhaktisiddhanta Prabhupada. Nothing. The devotee said, why? He left the planet in 1936. He says, because after 1932, my godbrothers began to tamper with the knowledge. It became political. In other words, the intent changed. It's very simple to change intent. It's being done constantly by people all over the world, by opinions, by analogies, by parables, by poetry, by mythology. This is a science, complete science. You've seen buildings collapse? You know buildings can collapse from one small little engineering mistake, one tiny little one. Maybe changing it, diluting it just a little bit, and a whole building comes tumbling down. So I'm using these stories and these analogies to explain the importance of making it perfect and making it pure. And what does Prabhupada say? Simply by repeating what your guru has said. We're not able to rewrite the Bhagavad Gita. Some people have now done that have come from Prabhupada's Sampradaya. We're not able to change Prabhupada's writings or scriptures. Not one period. He told Brahmananda and Hamsaduta. Right? Not one period. Not one comma. Because what does that mean when you change one period or one comma? Your intent is thinking you knew better than Guru. So better leave it alone. Just leave it. So I opened up Bhagavad Gita based on this verse, based on what Prabhupada is stressing. And I went to Spiritual Master in the back index. Right? One half page here of about, I don't know how many different cross references on Spiritual Master. So for us to understand Spiritual Master and understand the power of the Spiritual Master, the purity and the authoritativeness and the bona fide nature of the Spiritual Master, we have to study this. Isn't it? Does anybody disagree? No? Nobody disagrees, right? So I thought that I would have a little quiz. Okay? One point, if you know the English, of any of the verses in the Bhagavad Gita that refer to the Spiritual Master. Okay? 2 points, if you know the Sanskrit also. 3 points, if you know where it came from, which book, and 4 points if you know the verse, the chapter, like that. So in regards to spiritual master, who has a verse that could help to support the authoritative nature of a spiritual master as supported by the Bhagavad Gita? Because some people read the Bhagavad Gita before choosing a spiritual master. And myself, I read the Bhagavad Gita before I accepted Srila Prabhupada. And it was by reading the Bhagavad Gita that I understood, after being through numerous gurus, had been initiated by another guru before Srila Prabhupada. It was the Bhagavad Gita that explained to me that Prabhupada was an authorized guru. Right? There are many reasons we come to Krishna consciousness. We come through suffering, through intellectual pursuits, for a previous good birth. But the only thing that will sustain the true, pure Krishna consciousness, as Srila Prabhupada wanted in all of us, is by the study of Bhagavad Gita. So one of the first verses that I had memorized was Tadvidi Pranipatena Pariprashnena Sevaya. So you can't use that one. Is there anyone else that can quote a verse from the Bhagavad Gita discussing anything about the spiritual master or even the disciplic succession? Those are the two categories. Okay? And again, we know Evam Parampara Praptam, right? So now you can't use that one. So between spiritual master and Parampara, who can quote a verse that if somebody was starting to get like this, like they were with mythology and everything's okay and whatever you go to, whoever you listen to, whoever you speak to, somebody's challenging you like that in a discussion, right? You want to defend your position of strength, what you've come to in this disciplic succession of Srila Prabhupada's. The way you do it is you quote, right? From the scriptures. And you quote and you quote and you quote. And they listen and they listen. They finally say, you really know what you're talking about. They begin to accept you as a kind of a little bit of an authority. And all your authoritative position is coming from is what? Repeating exactly what Srila Prabhupada told us. So who can come up with one verse from the authoritative nature of the disciplic succession, or the authoritative nature and the qualities of a spiritual master? Nishringa? Does anybody have a microphone?
Shushuma Dirnanam Yenastad Vichichakshare. Said the Upanishad says, we have heard from the undisturbed authorities who have clearly explained it. And this is how knowledge was transmitted. Prabhupada explains that undisturbed authority means somebody who is not disturbed by the waves and the modes of material nature. Even in the most distressful condition of life, he's undisturbed. So we saw that with Srila Prabhupada many times. How he was undisturbed by even the most difficult circumstances.
And the other point is that when we listen to Nishringa, he was just come to visit, he was temple president many places in India, Hawaii, Texas, and also was probably the first or one of the first devotees to actually preach in Bangalore back in the 70s. And also Rathayatra Prabhu, big Sankirtan book distributor from California, who's living in Bangalore now. So that's one verse. It helps us now. We've heard that, right? It helps us get strengthened to understand. Otherwise, what do we do when somebody challenges us? We're meeting with people all day long. Rich people, educated people, scholars, spiritualists. And for our position to be strong and never waver and deviate from the Sampradaya. So, I think you got about 3 points. Verse 13. Okay, we're up to more points. But we can do this, in the future and actually have some prizes, spiritual prizes for those who get the most points. Gives like an incentive. Like in my business, it's the same thing. If you want to sell an insurance policy, you have to become the best, isn't it? If you want to tell somebody about Krishna and make them change their lives to come to Krishna, you have to be the best. What is the best? Knowing the scriptures. We're not the best, but the sense of knowing the scriptures. And I actually asked him yesterday, we were talking, And I asked him, I said, how many times have you read Srila Prabhupada's books? He said 20 times. All of the books. Haribol.
Hare Krishna. I have a verse related to the authoritative sources from Bhagavad Gita. Chapter 13, text 26.
From the telephone.
From Bhagavad Gita. I remembered the verse.
If you remember it without the telephone.
Yes. Anyetvevam ajanantaha shrutva anyebhya upasate tepi chati tarantyeva mrityum shruti parayana. The translation is, again there are those who, although not conversant in spiritual knowledge, begin to worship the Supreme Person upon hearing about Him from others. Because of their tendency to hear from authorities, they also transcend the path of birth and death.
Perfect. Perfect. Because there it is again, authorities. Did you ever look sometimes at the purports? It's almost like looking for a code. You know, like an encryption. You know, in the old wars, they would communicate through encryptions. I mean, you could form a template with Prabhupada's books and you'd find bona fide, authoritative, pure source. It's a constant repetition. Why? Because Kali Yuga is so full of cheaters. Every step you take is cheating. And on a spiritual level, it's best business. My God, the billions and millions of dollars that are made by cheaters, because people are gullible. Because, oh, pure milk. Yes, he said it's pure milk. I mean, I'm being told constantly about filtered water, triple filtered water, osmosis, this and that. Well, my friends that live in Vrindavan have taken the water to labs. I've read about it on the internet. All cheating. They may have no bacteria, but they have 7 different pesticides, insecticides, and fungicides from groundwater because they're put in plants and purified there, taken from water, probably from the city. Nobody looks into that though. If you try to get to what is the purest water? Because Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, when it comes to water, rasoham apsakonteya, that I am the taste, the quenching taste in water. Now, if we're in India and we want the purest water, where is it coming from? Can't hear. Yell. Huh? Rain? No. No, actually, you get a lot of what's called, it recycles from dirty places, and the rain they call acid rain. It still has sulfuric particles in it and everything. So if you're looking for the purest water, Gomukh, the source of the Ganges, the Himalayas. So you have 2 waters in India, Ketch and Himalaya. Those are probably some of the 2 of the purest waters. In America, it's from springs. A lot of those are getting contaminated too. But isn't everybody in the pursuit for the purest of what they're using and getting? Everything's contaminated now. Everybody's cheating. But yet, okay, so we won't go crazy about organic and pure, but at least in the Sampradaya, we want to know the purest, and that is in Srila Prabhupada's books. And we're watching one after the other, after the other, after the other, break the Sampradaya, bring in Mayavadis. I was a Mayavadi before I joined ISKCON. A pure Pakka Mayavadi, and before that I was an atheist. You know the difference? There is no difference. Do you know that? There's no difference between Mayavadi and atheist. Because neither believe in God. They believe they're God. And why did you descend from this material world and come to this samsara, this Maya? Because you wanted to be God. Welcome to being a Mayavadi. No difference. Just packaged in a different package. So any association with them, hearing them, many people, leaders, are associating with Mayavadis. Then they're introducing them into their groups. And by reading this one verse, Prabhupada clarifies the importance of the purity of the Sampradaya. Is there anyone else that can come out, because the bell is ringing a lot? Is there anyone else that can come up with another verse regarding Sampradaya, authoritative nature, the purity of the Guru, not from the telephone? Someday you'll be preaching, you won't have your telephone. I know it's Kali Yuga. I mean, it takes a long time to look it up, but it's more impressive when it's here, isn't it? Like, I'm always very impressed in the morning when devotees are reciting all the prayers in front of Srinivas Govinda by heart, memorizing. So same thing with the verses. Now I know that a lot of people know the verses. Maybe they're shy. But still, if you know it, just say it. You know one. Give him the microphone. Don't be shy. When you're preaching, you're like a lion.
In the first chapter, Arjuna also makes this reference to an authority while quoting that if I don't follow the Vedic standards of Varnashram Dharma of doing my duty, not killing my relatives and friends, then I will reside in hell. This I've heard by authority from authorities. I don't exactly remember the verse.
From the Gita?
First chapter.
Okay.
Ahobata mahat papam kartum vyavasita vayam yad rajasukulopena hantum. No, not that. Bhavati iti anushushtruma.
You know, these things are very powerful. And Prabhupada has given us the clarity of understanding everything. I mean, I was amazed, again, like when I was with Chanchalapati the other day. We looked at one verse. Do you remember that verse, Chanchalapati, by heart or no? That we went, aham, ahasmi. I mean, it was all like repetitious, and how Prabhupada translated it was amazing, wasn't it? Do you know a verse? Guru or some parampara? Give him the mic. Give the mic. Going to the telephone again?
I'm waiting for it. Atmanyeva atmana uddharet. Before. One verse before. One verse before that.
I can sit here and open the Bhagavad Gita and read all of them if you'd like.
What is
But
this
the point
verse
is,
number?
we've got to memorize them.
Uddhared atmanatmanam natmanam avasadhayet atmaiva hi atmano bandhur atmaiva ripur atmanaha. This is 6.5.
This is a homework. Everybody memorizes one verse. Now I'm leaving for Mysore today. I may be back in a week or two. But everybody think of one very important verse that will substantiate what Prabhupada said here about bona fide, authoritative, bona fide. Go back to the verse, read the purport. I've put dots by about 13 to 15 different times Prabhupada said authoritative, bona fide, authoritative, bona fide. The biggest controversy we have right now is not in the purity of what's being done here. It's in the hope to maintain it for 10,000 years. And the way to do that is not to change anything and to quote. We've never learned purports, but I'm sure people could even do that and memorize that. But it's at least to memorize the Sanskrit, memorize the English translation, and if you can, the verse reference. And to close, because I guess it's getting late, and once 2 bells rings, they don't give me 3 bells. But And I wanted to make it a little interactive, because I know even me, if I sit under that fan, I'm like... So to create interactivity and for us to memorize these verses, very, very strategic in our preaching and in helping and convincing. I mean, the devotees that helped me come to Krishna consciousness, it was amazing. The verses and the things that Prabhupada said that they repeated. And I was a Mayavadi, but what they said meant so much to me. It took 6 months to be able to approach personalism, to understand Krishna as a person. Very dangerous, this Mayavadi. Very poisonous. Do not associate with anything or anyone that is reciting the scriptures that is under that mentality. You might as well go when you have cancer to some quack doctor who is going to cut you open and take the wrong organ. You die. That's how dangerous it is. And you know, with the best doctors in the world, you read about this, the mistakes they make. They take the wrong organ out. They take the wrong half of the brain. There was a very important Indian woman who went to America and had brain surgery. They took the wrong half of the brain out. So everything is based on authoritative. Do your due diligence. Do your inquiries. If you have questions, never be afraid to ask them from anyone. Ask them from another godbrother. That godbrother can go, Prabhu, I'm going to go look it up. I'm going to get the references from Prabhupada's books. You go here under spiritual mastery. You go here under disciplic succession. So many quotes. I would say start from there. Because that's what we're dealing with right now. We're dealing with a catastrophe of the changing of Prabhupada's books, where Prabhupada said not even a period, not even a comma, furious, so upset with Rameshwar, his transcripts. So we read all these things. This is what gives us the strength. We came from ISKCON Prabhupada to accept this philosophy, and it's not a philosophy, it's Prabhupada's instructions. But you wouldn't believe the webs that are woven to make everybody think that, oh, well, actually, you really need a living guru. And Prabhupada addressed that in 1969 to Tamal Krishna and Madhuvisa. Living guru is eternal. So don't bring Krishna nor guru to the mundane material platform. That is offensive. Krishna speaking. Prabhupada even mentions Guru Granth Sahib, eternal, the scriptures. And if you don't have a pure devotee present in front of your eyes, like the avatar only comes how many millenniums, Krishna comes. And yugas, this is the Vani, this is the pure Guru. This is pure Guru. But any of us can become a clergy, as Prabhupada said, or a priest to help guide, to help instruct, because there's so many questions. A devotee came up to me also the other day. He said, I'm stuck. I said, how long have you been with folk? Oh, I've been, a few years. Have you finished all of Prabhupada's books? He said, no, I'm still working on the Bhagavad Gita and I'm stuck. I said, so when you were stuck, did you continue reading? He said, no, I just wanted to first have that question answered. I said, make your note, your question, and continue reading. It was about, Krishna says of fishes, I am the shark. I don't understand that. I said, Krishna's everything. Krishna's everything. But Krishna is also, just like he reveals the Virata Rupa, for all of history, for if somebody comes and says, I am God, I am Avatar. You say, okay, you're God, show me the Virata Rupa. Oh, what are you talking about? I'll give you some vibhuti. Here's some vibhuti. Smells good. You're God. You're Bhagavan. You're Krishna. Yada hi dharmasya. The scriptures tell us of who's coming. There's some sampradayas that say that Lord Chaitanya isn't an incarnation. But the Bhagavatam, the Bhagavatam, there's places that are very clear about the coming of Lord Chaitanya. He was considered somewhat of a covered, not as other yuga avatars or personal avatars of Krishna that come, are Kapila and all the other guru avatars are personally mentioned in the scriptures and the Vedas. But there's verification and validation where you can go and speak to other sampradayas and say, it's right here, the telling. The coming of Christ was also foretold 5,000 or so many years in advance, 3,000 in the prophecies of Isaiah, so to speak. Now, it's kind of a broken sampradaya, but Shastra and Scripture of the Vedas is very complete. The prophecies are very complete. Like a meteorologist, storms are coming. Right? It gives you some knowledge through science. This is a science. There's nothing more scientific than God. And if you can't see Him, that's your fault. America is scientific if you're living in India, right? It exists. It's material. It's made of buildings. Just because you don't go there doesn't mean it doesn't exist. I don't believe that America exists. I haven't seen it. They say that about God, right? How can God exist? I haven't seen God. I mean, in America, that's how they speak. The way of validating something in America, I can taste it, I can touch it, I can feel it, I can smell it, I can see it. Called empirical, right? So if you can't see God, and God is scientific, do you know what I mean by scientific? It means it exists, it's real, it can be validated, it can be perceived. Just because you are too lazy to get on the plane, get the money, get your passport, get your visa, and land in America, does that mean America doesn't exist? But you could argue all day, I haven't seen it, I haven't touched it, I haven't been there, so I don't believe it exists. And by your stupid science, you're right. It doesn't exist. Right? By your logic. But now somebody comes and says, no, I've been there. I've been to America. It does exist. Now you're saying, really? It does exist? And then 10 people come and say, I've been there. It does exist. So now, how are you learning America's existence? Without being there, how are you learning about it? What is my name? Huh? Shravanandana. So by hearing. That's the first thing in devotional service is hearing. We're hearing. That's how you learn about America. These people are learning by hearing. They haven't been there. They haven't touched it. They haven't seen it. They haven't felt it. This is before photography, let's say. Okay, you saw a picture. Anybody can make a picture. We have pictures all the time of Krishna. So their argument's going to be there. You're going to get these challenges. Maybe not so much in India because everybody has faith. But if you really want to bring them close to the faith of this sampradaya, which gives direct perception of Krishna because of Prabhupada's power and his purity and his position. So now it goes beyond hearing. Now you're having kirtan. Now you're tasting the prasadam. You're beginning to feel more and more and more the presence of Krishna in everything. Everything you do, you're supposed to do. Somehow or another, Krishna is showing you that, no, you shouldn't do this, you're doing that. You're starting to feel Krishna's presence. Then by the mercy of Guru, yes, you will be there. You will scientifically, as we say, be in the presence of Krishna. When we were with Prabhupada, we felt we were in the presence of Krishna. Because he was his pure, direct representative. As good as meeting the President of America, so to speak, we were meeting Prabhupada, who was the greatest devotee in our time, who spread this Krishna consciousness all over the world. And in the books, they took out greatest exponent of Krishna consciousness in the Western world. How dare they? 5, 6 years I've been asking them to put it back. They've all said, oh, we'll put it back, we'll put it back. Why did it get taken out? Envy, Mayavadi, all the things creeped in. Who put those things in the books? Prabhupada himself. All the slogans under the acharyas, the 4 acharyas that are mentioned in the original Bhagavad Gita, all those were put in there by Srila Prabhupada himself. So why would you take that out? He is the greatest exponent of Krishna consciousness in the Western world. But we should be changing it, yes. He is the greatest exponent of Krishna consciousness in the whole world. The whole world. Not the Western world. Russia's not Western world. China's not Western world. Who spread Krishna consciousness in any of these countries? Prabhupada. So this is very dangerous, very important to memorize shlokas. Does anybody here disagree with that? No? Then everybody should learn, make homework, 1 shloka. You choose your own shloka. And if everybody chooses a different shloka, then association will be very nice if you have questions. Okay? Now I've taken that point, gone over and over it. I want to say one last thing, a nice story that Nishringa told me yesterday. So it's coming from him. There was this man, huh?
Prabhupada told this story more than once.
Okay, so Prabhupada told it, okay.
The last time he told it was on July 1st, 1977.
Wow. You see, this is called validation, because that's why I prefaced it by a story, right? Not scripture, not audio, but a story. Because devotees have, in conversations and in our memories, we've told things, and memories are getting foggy, so we always validate. But this is being validated more. He's probably read it, conversations or wherever, maybe even heard it on audio. So I'll let him tell the story. It's a very nice story.
Well, I read it in the Conversations book. I read this in the Conversation book, and the date of the story is July 1st, 1977. So there was a grocer named, and one man came in to buy some groceries, and he was shaved up. So the grocer asked him, "Why have you shaved your head?" He says, "Oh, Sargal Singh has died." And the grocer was very impressed by this man's devotion, teary eyes. He decided to shave his head in honor of Sargal Singh. So when later some customers came shopping, they said, "Oh, why have you shaved your head?" "Oh, you have not heard? Sargal Singh has died." So some of those people decided to shave their head also out of respect for Sargal Singh. Pretty soon a lot of people had shaved their heads. "Oh, why you shaved your head?" "Oh, the great, wonderful, most magnanimous Sargal Singh has died." "Oh, I didn't know. And so they shaved their head. Finally, one intelligent man, he asked, "So, who is this Sargal Singh?" "Well, I'm not sure, I don't know, let me ask. And he asked another shaved man, I also don't know. And they traced it back, Prabhupada jokingly said, they traced back the parampara to the grocer, and they asked him, why have you, he also didn't know. Finally they called that first man, who is this Sargal Singh? He says, oh, it was my donkey. This man was a dhobi, and he says, yes, it was the greatest donkey I ever had. He could carry heavy, heavy loads and without complaint. So Prabhupada commenting on this, he said, the intelligent men, the unintelligent men, they're not asking. They're not trying to find out what is the real thing. So Prabhupada used this story and another story to show that people have a tendency just to blindly follow without inquiring what is the real bona fide thing.
And to conclude, and I know that everybody knows verses. People are shy sometimes. We have to get rid of the shyness because we have to become like lions when it comes to preaching. And never let anybody defeat you, because it's a very strong thing that happens to your psyche when you're defeated by somebody who doesn't even know much. We have the greatest sampradaya, the greatest teachings, greatest guru. You're in the most perfect place. I guarantee that. I've seen what's happening over the years. I've been coming for over 30 years, and you're in the perfect sampradaya. Now take advantage of the beautiful things that Prabhupada spent his whole life giving us. A letter in December 1974. Please study all of my books very thoroughly. He often warned his disciples, quotation, when the waves of Maya attack, your little sentiment for Krishna may not save you. All my disciples must be thoroughly trained in the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. Letter, May 1972. He urged his leading preachers to diligently train devotees rather than constantly canvass. What's the use of so many devotees if none of them are knowledgeable? Thus, Srila Prabhupada worked tirelessly night and day to carefully translate, explain, and publish the most important Vaishnav scriptures such as Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, Srimad Bhagavad Gita, and Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Nectar of Devotion. So, and there's no criticism here because, like I said, you're in the perfect sampradaya. And I don't know thousands of verses. I would say Nishringa, when I talk to him, like any devotee, I love speaking, hearing verses, hearing the stories, direct stories of Prabhupada. Help me become stronger. Because every day we wake up, what does Bhaktisiddhanta say to do? I can't hear. You have to yell. Do what? Beat the mind with a shoe. And the other night, Bilva Mangala was saying, 1 second of not being vigilant, and the mind can take you away someplace so far. So it's beating the mind with a shoe, studying, remembering these verses, and you're going to be challenged. You're going to constantly be challenged internally and externally. And Prabhupada said, it's not the external forces that can defeat you, especially when you're well trained. It'll be the internal forces. So when the internal forces are trying to change your mind that what you're doing is not sampradaya, what's the word we used the other day? Unprecedented? That what you're doing is unprecedented? No. It's being supported by sampradaya, supported by Madhva Sampradaya, being supported by all Prabhupada's writings, his teachings, constantly. So be strong, internally, externally, and you will go back to Godhead. That is Prabhupada's pledge. So thank you very much for allowing me to be here in Bangalore for Brahma Mahotsava. It's been wonderful. I come here. When I arrive, I'm in Maya. And when I leave, I'm feeling my heart very full. Very full. So thank you.